Why are you doing this, man? Why are you running for mayor? I'll make a deal with you.
People at home, look him in the eye.
Okay. I'll make a deal. If you get a Tulsa tattoo, I'll get a Tulsa tattoo.
Oh, that's easy. Oh, yeah. Something failed them at some point, so why would they trust that the things that failed them in the past is going to do them any good now?
So actually, let's start the podcast out like this. Who are you voting for in the presidential election, Trump or Harris?
Whoa, 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 whoa. Clear out the room, I'm coming through. They want to see what I'm about.
And that's the name, you know.
Drill, I'm on a paper route. Extra,
You gonna hook me up? Okay.
Today's trying to top it. I put commas over bullshit. Yeah, I put that on mamas. They trying to block all my blessings.
Hey guys, welcome back to the People of Oklahoma podcast, where I talk to very interesting people here in Oklahoma. And I have someone that's going to be very important coming up, and actually right now for Tulsa specifically. And I have candidate for the mayor position. There we go. Coming up, elections coming up here at the end of August, and actually Monroe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I have Monroe Nichols on the podcast.
Yeah, glad to be here.
When is the election?
August 27th.
Okay, I was right. I said end of August.
Yeah, I didn't correct you.
Yeah.
I was like, you got it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. If I say anything out of line, you correct me. Seriously.
I will. I absolutely will.
And if you disagree with me, or if I disagree with you, then that's okay, because I want to talk. I want to know more about what you have going on in this campaign.
Yeah.
What you have going on. So actually, let's start the podcast out like this. Who are you voting for in the presidential election, Trump or Harris? Just kidding.
I'll
kidding.
answer it.
No.
I have one of those things about me where I'll answer any question.
Yeah, no.
You know? What's really funny, though, about that, so I've been in the legislature now for 8 years.
Right.
And in those 8 years, I'm a Democrat, and obviously the majority of the folks I work with on a daily basis are Republican.
Right.
And we have, like, a number of issues that, like, we fight like cats and dogs on.
Yeah.
And there's probably like 6 of them. But every session, like, we literally take hundreds of votes on all these things that usually pass the House 88-2 or something like that. So there's a lot of agreement on things. People don't think about it because they don't end up being the things that hit the front page of the newspaper. And I learned early in my career that when it comes to doing things that are positive for the state, you have to separate some of these issues where you really disagree on, because you might work with somebody who you just cannot stand at some point on something that's really critically important. And so you have to be able to go from one vote or one moment in time where you're like, man, I can't believe that you believe what you believe, to like slapping high fives because we got something done, right? And so, like, I've learned that when people tell me they're voting for somebody different for president, I might say, like, why would you do something like that? But it does not mean there's literally not 90% of the other things that we can work on together. And I've learned that being in the legislature. So, like, I don't have a problem to answer it, but I think sometimes people are like, are cagey.
Yeah, and
about
I don't
that
want
kind
you
of
to.
stuff.
I don't want.
I'm not going to answer it now.
Yeah, I don't want you to
I'm
answer
not
it because I'm going to use that clip as part of my short.
Oh, yeah.
And that's going to be the cliffhanger. And so people are going to be like, oh, who is he voting for? And then they're going to tune into the podcast and actually hear what you actually are running on, and not who you're voting for president. Because that's just one thing. There's so much more other aspects. Right. And that's the reason. And actually, I want to say I'm really impressed with your team, because I reached out to them. They said, they looked at my stuff, and they didn't ask for any of the questions that I'm going to be asking you. And I really appreciate that, because I know with some other podcasts that I've guests that I have on, they always want the questions beforehand. And
I think they probably think I'm not going to read them anyway.
No.
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
Good. We were late.
Yeah,
no.
I mean, I have no problem answering that, because I think sometimes it's, it's important to hear what people really think, and not the 5-point bulleted thing I put together before I walked in. So I'm excited.
So here's my first question, and this is probably my biggest. Why are you doing this, man? Why are you running for mayor? Like, I can't understand politics, because, like, I think it's more of maybe because I make online content, I maybe understand a little bit of it. I mean, I can talk about anything, and there's always going to be a percentage of the people that hate me, or not hate me, but hate the content I put out. So disagree, and so, like, why are you putting yourself through this? Why are you running for mayor? Yeah,
I mean, I think the future is just that important, right? Like, I think about my time in the legislature, and some of the things we do are 100% colored by partisanship, one way or the other. I think about DC, which is, always gridlocked and hard to get things done. If you're going to serve somewhere, local government is probably where you have the greatest opportunity to make a positive impact. And as I think about the issues that brought me into this race, I was most passionate about, particularly having a 16-year-old kid and think about his future in this community. I think about homelessness. I think about our obligation to improve student outcomes and education here locally, what it means to really invest in our workforce as a pathway of expanding our economy and making sure this community is safe. If you think about all those things, those hit the lives of every Tulsan on the daily. And if you want to impact those in the most aggressive way, City Hall is where you do it. And that's why I decided to run for mayor. And
so this is not your first go around in the political arena. You are currently the House of Representatives.
House District 72. 72. Yeah.
What district is that?
It's 72. So I have historically represented a little bit of Owasso, North Tulsa, the Kendall Whitty area. So my wonderful University of Tulsa, has always been in my legislative district. Okay. And now after redistricting, I actually cut across and go across downtown out to West Tulsa. So if you think about how diverse a place like that is, Tulsans from every race there, from almost every socioeconomic class are represented within that. And it also represents everything from a tip of a suburb to parts of the community that certainly, like I said, around like mixed income, but have some challenges, to like the University of Tulsa, which is like a top 100 institution in the country, cutting across, 11th Street, where you have all the great movement from Route 66 in the downtown. We have a lot of great things going on out in the West Tulsa, where we still have some things we have to work on. It has always helped me as a legislator have a very balanced approach in the way I thought about things. It's just so diverse, right? It's interesting. So I also chair the Oklahoma Legislative Black Caucus right now. And the Black Caucus is as large as it's ever been. So there's more black members serving in the Oklahoma legislature than ever before. That's in part because me and a couple other representatives actually were the first persons of color to serve in those districts. So that means that not only, is that cool from a history standpoint, but more importantly, it shows how diverse those places are, right? And so you can't just, be, about one thing or just about a couple of issues. You got to represent folks who have a lot of different interests. And I think it's the coolest thing about 72.
So, like, how long have you been? When did that election take place? Is this your first term?
No. I'm in term 4. So I got elected for the first time in 2016.
Okay.
And so my term officially ends in November. Then my successor's already been elected, actually. But but yeah, I'm in office till November.
Oh, okay, cool. So my next question for you would be, you're running on a couple of different things for mayor, and actually, let me back up because I want to understand basically this mayor. So does mayors run from term to? Do they have a 2-term limit? Or
there's no term limits for mayor.
There's no term.
So we have term limits at the Capitol. So you got 12 years that you can serve in the House and the Senate collectively. So you can't do 12 here and 12 there. It's 12 altogether. All the statewide offices have a 2-term limit, so you can do 8 years as governor, 8 years as lieutenant governor, that kind of deal. But the city positions, there are no term limits there. So somebody can be mayor for 50 years.
Or city councilor, is that?
No term limits there either. Yeah. Not in the local offices, yeah.
Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah. So you're running on a couple of different priorities in your campaign. And one of them was homelessness. Yeah. Another one was schools and students. Yep. And then another one was housing. And then the last one was relationships with the Native American. So let's start with homelessness. Yeah. Like, what is your plan on that?
Yeah, it's such a big issue I'm the only candidate who actually has a plan that's public online at monroeformayor.com. And what we've put together is a strategy that gets us to what's called functional zero homelessness by 2030. One of the reasons why 2030 is kind of a date marker, it wasn't arbitrarily picked. It's like one challenge that we have is actually affordable housing stock. So, the ability to build things is not something you can snap your finger and do. But I spent some time in the beginning of the campaign really working with, visiting with people around the community who are kind of working to support folks who are part of that unhoused population. I asked them, like, what are the needs of the people who are like working to solve this problem? There's a lot of people who are doing great work. And what I got over and over again was the need for the city to have a more influential role in kind of owning the issue, right? Not just saying, we're kind of concerned about it, or we'll kind of do something here, we'll bite around the edges saying no, like, no, a mayor has to come in, appoint somebody who has broad authority, who can work across city departments, who can bring these other nonprofit providers together, and we align our goals on how we move forward. So part of that homelessness plan is appointing somebody to lead that citywide effort. In addition to that, the city being an investor in outreach workers. And a lot of people say, well, why are outreach workers important? If we think about the issue of homelessness, as I've gone around, I've talked to a lot of people about it. And as you might imagine, a lot of people would identify a different problem for the reason why we have the numbers that we do. Some people say we don't have enough housing. Some people say it's a mental health issue. Some people say it's a substance abuse issue. Some people say it's a domestic violence issue. And the fact is, they're all right. Yep. They're all right. Yep. We can't approach this challenge as if it's like one challenge. It's like 400 different challenges. And so you invest in that outreach worker capacity. You understand, what Monroe needs versus what somebody else needs, so we can design interventions for Monroe. And whether we are serving him at the day center or at Iron Gate or at Salvation Army, we all have the same data system, which we're understanding that to make sure he gets served no matter, what his issue is. And so that alignment of that data and that case management is a big part of the plan. And then the other part is clearing up some of our permitting processes, which I think hits everybody in the housing and development field, actually. So you can get really predictably good outcomes, because we have to make sure that if we need affordable housing at some point, if you make people wait a long time, or if it gets too expensive to work with the city, an affordable housing project's not affordable anymore, right?
So what do you say? What do you say for the people that say, like, the homeless don't really want help? I mean, they
didn't back it up. They didn't back it up. So I spent some time looking at some other cities. We wouldn't be the first city to, get to functional zero homeless. And what that means is, it doesn't mean that there's nobody on the street. It means that in your community, based on the data, homelessness is rare, so very few people are doing it. It's brief, so people don't stay in it over a long period of time, and it's non-recurring, meaning that people who you have served don't fall back into it. And there's a number associated with that. And what the data tells us from other communities, Houston, Texas being a great case study, right? That the folks who are offered services take them up at a number about a little over 80%.
Oh, wow.
Now, you may say 20% or 15%, whatever that is left over, is a big number. That's true. But sometimes I fear that when we say, oh, people don't want to be served, it's more of a work avoidance deal than it is based on fact and evidence. So if I can tell you, I can solve 80-85% of a problem, I would legitimately be the most successful person to ever serve in government in the history of America.
That's a beat.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
That's passing.
And I can tell you, I used to be really proud of bees when I was in school.
Me too.
But I mean, I think that's the thing, right? We just have to get to work. And you have to own the issue, and you have to say we're going to end it. That's the reason why our plan says we're going to end homelessness as we know it, not that we're going to address it or tackle it. And I'm not going to go to a press conference and beat on a table and say, man, Monroe really cares about homelessness. Hold me accountable for the numbers, because I'm running to say we're going to end it by 2030.
Yeah, and there's a couple of things, like because I love Tulsa.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go look at my social media thing, like my goal for my social media.
You got a Tulsa tattoo?
No.
Oh, okay.
Do you have a Tulsa tattoo?
I'm not the one over here professing my love. I mean, I'm just saying.
Hey, I am wearing. Do you have these?
I don't. I mean, I'm wearing Tulsa on my chest. But I mean, I'm just saying, man. If you want to take this podcast to a new level,
all right, I'll make
get a tattoo.
I'll make a deal with you. I'll make a deal with you. I'll make a deal with you.
People at home. Look him in the eye.
Okay, I'm looking in the eye. I'll make a deal right now on the podcast. If you get a Tulsa tattoo, I'll get a Tulsa tattoo.
Oh, that's an easy deal. Easy money.
Oh, what?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's that deal. Yeah.
Do you have tattoos?
Yeah.
Do you really?
I got one right here. I got one on my shoulder.
This will be my first tattoo.
See, you got to be careful, man.
We're going to edit that part of the podcast out. I'll edit that part.
Yeah, right. See, you came in here saying, oh, yeah, I didn't give you the questions in advance. You know I was going to ask you.
Oh, gosh.
Things got heated up just
all right. You know what? Now I'm going to give you all the hard questions. Here we go. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
But no, I'll get one. If you get one, I'll get one.
All right. Done deal.
We'll do it. We'll do it. But going back to the topic at hand is what I really liked about, because I love Tulsa. I don't have a Tulsa tattoo, but I love Tulsa.
Yeah.
And the issues I have with Tulsa, you basically touched on a majority of your points on your priorities. So after I one of my friends endorsed you, went on, looked at your site, and I'm like, man, dude, he hits a lot of those things. And the other thing you pointed on, which I really appreciated, is that you put some sort of technology in there for data purposes, like being able to measure your success in it, of like saying that up front of, or you're going to measure these things in certain aspects with technology, because you'll never know how well you're doing in it or the successes you're getting from it if you don't measure it.
That's right.
I mean, that's part of the SMART goals, right?
I mean,
measurable, attainable.
My time in the legislature, I've been really, it's been really interesting because we have a lot of conversations if we're spending too much or too little on things. Rarely do we have any indication if something's working. Because I would argue if you're spending a little bit on something that doesn't work, that's 100% waste, right? If you're spending a lot of money on something that works, then we can evaluate that as a good investment, right? Like, based on the outcomes we're getting. And I think we need to move City Hall into a place where we are actually like a force for good from a problem-solving standpoint, and we're highly accountable, because it's not just about how we solve these problems internally at the city. It's how we're solving as Tulsans. Ending homelessness is not just a City of Tulsa mayor's office deal. There's a whole lot of people going to have a lot of contributions to it. We got to understand if like the full sum of those contributions, are they actually helping us make sure that folks who are unhoused are housed, stable, and are able to move forward in their lives? And if so, all of us doing great work need to know that. Need to be patted on the back, need to be able to celebrate it and know where we should spend our resources and encourage other people to do it. And so this new era of accountability I talk about is not just because it is like a politically good thing to say. It is how we should govern moving forward, and how we should understand as we're all coming together, data can be an excellent translator. It's the way that you cut through partisanship and you cut through all the other stuff. It's like, is something working or not?
Right.
And if it's not working, how do we make it work better? Because I love this community. I believe that Tulsa has more potential than any other community in the country. And that's not just because I live here, but I do believe that. I fundamentally believe that. I think that potential is always going to be unrealized unless we dispose of some of these challenges that we have. And disposing of these challenges mean we have to have a lot of discipline in how we're measuring our success over time.
Yeah, I went to a Thai Pros, Tulsa Young Professional Organization.
I used to be one.
Did you?
I'm 40 now. I think at 40 you age out.
Oh, do you? Oh,
I think so.
Oh, well, dang. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
maybe we're going to make up a new one. We'll make up a new one.
Yeah, it could be
typos or what? Tulsa Old Professionals.
I don't know if you need to be old. Is there not like a middle something in there?
No, I heard after 40-year-old. No, I'm just kidding. You're not old.
Well, that's okay. I will tell you, I have my opponents are older.
Yeah, how old? Are you the youngest?
No, so I think Casey Bradford's younger than me, but I think Brent's in his 60s, Karen's in her 70s. Yeah. I'm in my 40s. So.
Yeah, I think 40 is a great age.
I think it's a great age. I hope it is.
I think 40 is the new 30. I think that's what they say.
That's what they say. That's what they say.
So I went to this Thai Pros event, and back when we had the Cancer Treatment Centers of America here, you remember that over off of 70 or 169?
Off 169, yeah.
Yeah, the CEO
got my first COVID shot over there. It was Creek Nation at that point. Oh, really? No, my second COVID shot I got there.
Okay. Yeah, so they because they bought up that building.
Yep.
Yeah. So the CEO came and talked to Tulsa, and this is when I'm probably like 22, and he said I remember this from his speech. He said, Tulsa's a sleeping giant. You guys just don't realize. Right. And this is before all the stuff happened. This is like 2011, 2012. So a lot of that stuff in downtown hasn't happened yet. We hadn't hit 1 million people in the greater Tulsa area yet. Haven't had a bunch of these manufacturing jobs. Amazon hadn't came in yet. And he was like, Tulsa's a sleeping giant. You guys have so much to offer, and you guys just don't realize it yet. But here in the next 10, 15 years, it's going to be a different landscape.
That's right.
And he was so right.
That's right.
So right.
That's right. I talk a lot about winning the next decade is like a focus of mine. Yeah. So like I think about, and it's not that I want Tulsa to be any other city, right? But there's some cities who we all know them. They won a decade. So if you looked at their skyline from 2020 or 2012 to 2022, it's completely different. So it's like the Austins and the Nashvilles and the Denvers of the world. Now I don't want to be Austin, Nashville, or Denver, but in the way that Tulsa would do that in our own unique way. We can be that next community that just wins a decade, makes a run at a decade. And I think that's within our grasp. And I'm very much focused on that.
Yeah. And that's what I tell I tell people, look, because I have a YouTube channel called Stephen Talks Oklahoma, plug.
I mean, aren't they already watching it right now?
What, Stephen Talks Oklahoma?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So this is part of my YouTube channel that talks about my podcast.
I got you.
So I have a YouTube channel, and then offset of my YouTube channel is the People of Oklahoma podcast.
I got you.
So, but I do like vlogs and sit down videos talking about Tulsa, because I'm a real estate agent, and so I actually move a lot of people from outside of Oklahoma here to Tulsa because of that YouTube channel, and I talk about everything Tulsa has to offer, the positives, the negatives, the good.
I did watch a little bit.
You did?
I did.
Did you subscribe?
I don't think I subscribed. I will though.
Okay. I appreciate it.
After you get your tattoo, I think.
Okay.
I need that love of Tulsa tested before I can subscribe.
I'm a man of my word, and then secondly, I will do anything for a subscriber. So.
Oh, really? All right. Vote for Monroe.
Yeah, all right. Well, I don't live in Tulsa, so. What am I even doing?
Okay, hold on. Wait a second. We love Tulsa so much. That we don't have a tattoo, and we don't live in Tulsa.
Well, I live in Owasso because I would live in Tulsa, actually around the area that you live in, because I love that Midtown area.
All right.
But my wife graduated from Owasso.
Hey, the key to a happy life's a happy wife. We're not even going to joke around with that.
We had an argument for about 60 seconds, and then I found myself next month living in Owasso.
No, you did the right thing. Yeah. You did the right thing.
And Owasso's great. I love Owasso.
I love Owasso too.
Yeah, Owasso's great.
It's my favorite suburb.
So, but I move a lot of people from outside the state here to Tulsa off my YouTube channel. I talk about all these good things, and one of the questions I always get from them is the homeless situation.
Yeah,
because they're coming from San Francisco.
Right,
they're coming from Austin. They're coming from Denver, and obviously homeless is a big thing over there. And also what I tell them about Tulsa, we talk about the homeless issue, but we also talk about how they found Tulsa and things like that. And I tell them, like, when you pick Tulsa, you're playing a game of chess, not checkers.
That's a good point.
Because if you're playing checkers, you're going to look at that next big area to move to.
That's right.
Denver, Nashville,
Atlanta,
Austin, Atlanta,
some
of the Las Vegas, Utah, Arizona.
Right.
You're not really looking at what the next move is.
That's right.
And I believe, in my opinion, when you pick Tulsa, you're playing a game of chess.
I believe that to be true.
Looking at different, and you can use that as a campaign.
Well, now you've already told everybody. They're like, he stole that. I was like, what? What are you talking about? And then they'll play it back. I'm like, yes.
I will be the first one to play. I'll be the first one to put it on there. But then I get back to the homeless issue.
Yeah.
And so they'll come down for a visit, and they'll look around. And they'll be like, oh, Stephen, don't ever say you have a homeless problem, because
it's not the same.
Because it's not the same.
Yeah.
But I like how you're attacking it now, because why do we not attack it now when it is such a small sample? Which I don't know if you want to say 3,000, 4,000, 5,000.
Yeah, I mean, the estimates are upward, could be as high as 5,000.
Yeah.
I think the point in time count was about half of that, and so they say it's probably like double what that point in time count is, somewhere in there.
Yeah. So I mean, why would we not attack it when it's attackable versus when, like, if you look at San Francisco, where they have, I think they said like 100,000.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. The numbers are crazy. I mean,
something's crazy.
The thing that I'm most concerned about is that it's grown every year, about 8% growth in the homeless population every year. And since 2020, family homelessness has gone up 34%. I think about that a lot. There are 900 kids at Tulsa Public Schools alone, and whether the people think it or not, there are numbers in Jinx, in Bixby, in Broken Arrow, in Owasso, but in Tulsa Public Schools alone, there are 900 kids who are homeless.
Man,
there are 1,200 kids who are TPS kids who are in families facing eviction. So that's one school district in our community. Those numbers grow larger once you add the other districts up. And so, it's an issue that is a quality of life issue as well. I think it touches everything from people wanting to move here, but also the people who are here, and young people. Those kids are chronically absent because they're dealing with some challenges I've actually never had to deal with in my life. Right. And so we're not helping ourselves on the student outcomes front, even if we don't make sure that they have stable places to be. And so I think this is a problem to attack, not just because of the aesthetics of it, but because of the true impact that it has on Tulsa families. And so when it's growing every year, whether the numbers are large or they're small, and I would say an 8% growth every year is actually pretty sizable. It does warrant itself as like a challenge that we have to aggressively deal with in a very compassionate but a very aggressive way.
And also, I mean, I think helping homeless is great for the homeless, but also if we look on the economic scale.
Oh, absolutely.
if we're trying to get these big companies, like we just missed out on Tesla,
right?
They picked Austin a couple of years ago, and these other companies, like they're going to come to Tulsa, and we are competing with these other areas. We need to look really
good. It's the welcome mat to the community. Right. Yeah, so absolutely.
Downtown Tulsa, and downtown Tulsa is beautiful with the architecture, with all the things. If they, if we're already playing behind the 8 ball because we're Tulsa, and we're not Austin or Denver or these other places, like we got to be.
I mean, the thing
on
that's
top of it.
It's a great point. It's like if we are competing, even if we have all the same problems, well, what sets us apart then if we got all the same problems, right? And I think that's so important, right? It's like we got to make sure when people get here, they understand that we deal with all the problems that a lot of places do, but we're handling those things. And so what that says to a CEO, I would imagine, is now if this community says they can produce a workforce for me long term, I know they will, because they get about their business of taking care of the challenges they face, because every community does. And I think that's what I want us to be known for, is that we're moving the city in a different direction. And I think that's why the accountability and data is so important. But it's also why it's so important that we engage everybody who's around the community who wants to be a part of the solution.
Right. Have you heard of an organization, nonprofit called Be Heard?
Yeah.
I had him on the podcast.
I think I'm going to go see him next week, actually.
Okay. Yeah, go see him. Evan Do Good. Evan Do Good.
He slid my DMs, man.
Did he?
Yeah.
Hey, I slid in your DMs too.
Yeah, that's true. I'm telling you, I guess that's how to get me to show up.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Because when I was reading about all your stuff, I was like, I gotta hook him up with Evan. Especially, I think you guys could do some great partnership and great work together.
Absolutely.
Also, have you heard of Grand Mental Health?
Yeah.
My buddy's the chief clinical officer. He was also on my podcast.
Oh yeah.
I think that would be another great partnership.
Absolutely. It's so I've now been in the legislature for 8 years, as I mentioned, and what has been it's kind of like it's actually not funny, but you can always predict what somebody's going to say, whether we're talking about the issue of gun violence or homelessness or whatever. People are like, it's a mental health issue, which is oftentimes like, we can't solve that. We're going to throw that away because we don't know. What do we do about mental health issues? So I'm very appreciative of Grand and how they're expanding, and a number of others. And I think, it's another area where the city has to be a real player, making sure that we become a community that people who suffer and who deal with mental health issues, we have the capacity to make sure they're taken care of. Because, I mean, look, it's true in my family. It's true within my friend group. It hits people no matter what their income is or anything like that. And so being a community, I mean, again, I think this is part of what makes you an attractive place. It's not just about, here's this negative issue around mental health. It's like, no, we all deal with it.
Right.
Making sure we have places to go is fundamentally a really good thing.
Yeah.
Really good thing.
Yeah. And I liked what you said there, is like, mental health is such a hard thing to tackle. To be honest, I mean, it is. It's a hard thing, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't attempt to tackle
That's
it.
right.
Just like with homelessness. I bet you that's going to be a huge task to take over.
Yeah.
But for someone that doesn't want to get help, 80% of people want help.
That's right.
So why should we not go after tackle the issue?
Yeah, and what we should always realize, too, is those people who are on the streets, in most cases, and I think this is true about anything else, right? There are people who also have this like distrust of the system, who've never been homeless, right? Like, so like we can identify with that, but oftentimes it's people that something failed them at some point. So why would they trust that the things that failed them in the past is going to do them any good now? And so you take your chances on your own. When they start seeing that, yes, this community is a community where we can change people's outcomes, I bet that 20% left over, whatever that number is, I bet those folks start to think, okay, no, I can trust that these people care. This community is a community that's going to, help me with my situation or whatever the case may be. But, I get people, really anybody, but particularly people who've been out on the street who have a certain distrust that somebody's going to, help them.
Right.
And so like, I think that's the deal. Like, you got to be known as a community who can get hard things done, and everybody's going to take notice.
Yeah. And that's one of the things, like, for me, I'm a recovering alcoholic.
Yeah.
I celebrated 4 years on May 27th.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And one of the big differences of the reason, like, some of these people that are homeless deal with the addiction issues is, if I didn't have a support system behind me, I mean, there's not much difference between me and that person that's on the street that has that's battling some sort of addiction problem.
Absolutely.
And so if I didn't get the help from my parents, my church, my wife, I could have been there too.
How old are you?
And I'm 32.
Yeah. So you didn't ask me this, and I don't often share the story, but since you share that with me, I think it's maybe appropriate. My dad was a Houston police officer when I was growing up. My parents divorced, and so I moved from the Houston area to Waco. Where my mom's family lived. My dad stayed in Houston, and my dad was a police officer, but functioning alcoholic. I mean, and at 35 years old, died. And I just share that because I know the impact of those things. I know how much courage it takes to confront it. I know how tough it is to, move forward. The day, I know it gets easier over time, but I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you having the courage to do it. Because they're, I don't pretend to know, but you think about all the fullness in your life and all the people who love you so much. And the things you've done for them just by confronting that challenge. I just share with you as somebody who's been on the other side of it, how special that is.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I think that's kind of what changed my perspective of first off, homelessness. Because when I went to rehab, in Purcell, Oklahoma, Rob's Ranch, shout out Rob's Ranch. But a couple of guys, it was a men's Christian-based rehab, a 90-day facility, great facility. And I met a couple of guys in there that were homeless, and they have a scholarship program through some of the different tribes. Almost all the guys that were homeless were part of.
They were a tribal citizen,
Tribal citizen. So they're able to go there, and then also Rob's Ranch offers scholarship. And after you kind of dry out and you're sober for a couple, they're no different than me.
Yeah, no, that's right.
I was like, dude, the only difference between me and you is I had a support system where you didn't. Yeah. And, and I was like, holy moly, I got to change my perspective. And that also changed my perspective on people that use like heroin and
absolutely.
My drug of choice was alcohol. But we're the same person.
I met somebody a couple weeks ago, and she's been on the streets for, I think, 3 or 4 years now. Been on the housing wait list for like 3 years, by the way. So trying to navigate the system. And she told me, she's like, I'll be honest, I am a user. And she's like, but I started using when I got homeless so I could stay awake because I was afraid of being sexually assaulted on the streets. And now hooked. So, I mean, it's like, not only is this stuff that impacts everybody, the pathway that led somebody toward it, we have to check our perceptions on, those things as well, right? Because you're right. I mean, there's I know a lot of people from high school and college who have dealt with it, and you're right. It's like, but for the grace of God, I could easily be on the streets as well. And I think you have to humanize things and humanize people, and that's a big part of it, man. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. I like your approach though of not every situation for homelessness is going to be the same.
That's right.
Attack it differently.
That's right.
So I'm on board with that.
Yeah.
Now, what about this crime?
Yeah.
I mean, and that's the second question that I get from people that are moving outside of the state is actually homelessness is probably number 2 or 3 on their list. But the number one thing is the crime. Because here in Tulsa, whoever made the deal with the first 48.
Oh, man.
A horrible deal.
I think we're not, it's actually really, this is kind of interesting. When I travel around, people know us from the first 48.
That's what they know.
It's like a thing.
And honestly, I need to get breaking off by the city of Tulsa because my YouTube channel is the one that changes some people's mind of thinking that whatever they paid the first 48, they need to pay me double.
Yeah, well,
I mean, I don't.
I was gonna say I hope we did not pay the first 48 to do that to us.
They're doing us a disservice.
It's like, man, it's like taking out I don't even know how many commercials saying, hey, you don't want to be in this place.
Right. Yeah. So that's like the number one question. They're like, oh yeah, I see you on the first 48 all the time.
Yeah.
Why? Is Tulsa super dangerous? And I'm like, honestly, I've lived in Tulsa since 2012, 2011, and I didn't even know that Tulsa was dangerous until one of my buddies told me in 2016 or 17 that we're on the first 48 all the time. I was like, I had no idea.
Yeah.
I had no idea, but it is a problem, I guess, and people so do you have any points on it?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of things when we think about public safety. I mean, most of the time we think about public safety, we're thinking law enforcement, which is law enforcement incredible. Like I said, my dad was a police officer. My uncle still is a police officer, actually. So law enforcement definitely has an important role in protecting communities. But outside of that, there's a lot of other things we have to do to mitigate crime in Tulsa. And when I got my first job out of college was in the mayor's office, actually. Mm-hmm. I worked for Kathy Taylor, and she was mayor. In my role...
By the way, she endorsed you.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And I guess she thought I did a pretty good job back then. And my role at the time was to really address juvenile crime in particular. So one of the first things that we did was we created 18 after-school programs in areas of town where we had, high incidence of juvenile crime. Two reasons why. A, juvenile crime went up between 3 and 6. Makes sense. Kids are out of school. Parents might not quite be at home yet. So we had to do that. And then the other reason is because we also saw this overlay where we saw high incidence of juvenile crime. We also saw like big gaps from an achievement standpoint, right? So trying to think about how can the city play a role in those two things. The second thing that we did as part of that plan is we started working with gang outreach workers that worked with kids who were gang affiliated, which, and that's all across town, and who had also already been in the court system. So these weren't probation. These are just outreach workers helping them navigate the system, because the goal was that we could get them to a place to where any mistake they made to this point could be a mistake they didn't make in the future was the goal. Mm-hmm. Then the last thing we did was created a couple of reentry programs for folks who had offended in Tulsa County and were coming back, because we wanted to make sure recidivism was something that we worked on. So, but 6 to 8 months before they were released from DOC custody, they were transferred to Taft, Oklahoma. We had a men's and female skill center. They learned job skills, and they were connected to a job when they got back to Tulsa, and that was the goal. And I mention that because I think, I think about crime on three forefronts, I guess. One is the prevention of it. What are we doing to make sure we can take preventative community-based efforts to do it? That's where those after-school programs come, but you can, bridge it out to other areas as well. What are we doing from an intervention standpoint? So making sure that folks who are kind of getting caught up in the system, that we're doing everything we can to redirect them. And then on the other side, like we just know we got folks who are going to be coming out, and we got to make sure they don't fall back into a lifestyle of crime. And the last part's enforcement. And I think that's why you have to approach public safety. You can't just say we're going to throw police at it, because police are typically a response to something that's already happened. The question is, how do you make an excellent city, an excellent city that's safe, and all those kind of things. And to me, it really is about that prevention, intervening, and making sure that folks, when they come back home, have a shot.
Yeah, and then so with the after-school programs, and this will kind of lead us into our next topic, is that we talked. So, like I said, I talked to all these people looking to move here to the States or to Tulsa. Number one, it was the crime. Yep. Number 3 or 4 was probably homelessness. Number 2 was Tulsa Public Schools.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And there's a couple of things I want to touch on with the public schools, but like, why does Tulsa Public Schools get such a bad rap?
I think some of it is because the TPS is an easy target for a lot of folks. For a lot of people who take a very surface level view of what does it mean to be successful in education, they're like, oh, well, your outcomes are not where they should be. And what happens when you do that, it's almost like looking at the tip of an iceberg. And you know that the tip of the iceberg is just what's above water. Right. But it goes way deeper down below the surface that you can't see. And so if we were to evaluate the reasons why Tulsa Public Schools has challenges sometimes the student population, well, I already mentioned 900 of those kids are homeless. Yeah. I mentioned 1,200 of them are in families facing eviction. That the data tells us that after the first month, they're 50% chronically absent. After the first year, they're 70% chronically absent. How are you going to learn how to read if you're not in school? Right. So there's that part. We have all these other challenges as it relates to transportation and all this kind of stuff. It is a socioeconomic crunch that makes it very difficult for kids to be able to achieve. And so that's not just the job of Tulsa Public Schools. Those numbers are not an indictment on the school system. Those numbers are an indictment on us as a community. And why are we doing more to fix those things, to remove as many of those barriers as possible to give young people a shot? I mean, I think and I do feel that is the role as a mayor. So I've already, and it's online, I've taken it as a personal challenge. I'm not going to have Tulsa Public Schools or any district that has kids in the city of Tulsa. Union has Tulsa kids. Owasso has Tulsa kids. Jinx has Tulsa kids. Broken Arrow has Tulsa kids. I'm not going to ask those school districts to deal with the weight of my affordable housing problem if I'm not going to hold myself accountable for their literacy rates and their graduation rates. And so one of the things we've talked about is the creation of an Office of Children, Youth, and Families. So at the city, we're constantly thinking about how we're spending resources that's supporting young people and families across this community, whether that be after-school programs, whether that be crossing guards, whatever it may be, and then thinking about what are the large-scale investments that need to be part of the next vision package that's really going to uplift kids in school and remove some of those barriers, and how's that reflected in everything else that we do at the city. A lot of people talk about the importance of the next generation because it is like a nice thing to say. I think your priorities follow your dollars in many cases, and we really need to have a real conversation about how we're spending money to get better outcomes for young people. And the other two things I would just mention, because they track what you were saying. I, for a couple years, ran the Business Retention and Expansion Program at the Tulsa Regional Chamber of Commerce. And when we would look at the reasons why companies moved to a community, like incentives are like number 4 or something like that.
Right.
Education, quality of life for like 1 and 2. And so the number one reason people move to or from your community, to your point, is schools. And so if we think about like our long-term economic viability, we have to get that right. Actually, it's not like because it feels good or, I feel good when I help little. Our big bet is that these young people turn out to be successful and are able to be successful here in Tulsa. And so we have to invest in the next generation. So
it's funny you bring that up because people that when they contact me to move here, they've already done the research. Right? They're contacting me,
looking at the newspaper. Yeah.
And they get transferred here to Tulsa, right?
Yeah.
They said, hey, we want to look at Owasso, Broken Arrow.
That's right. Yeah, there you go.
They're like, we're working in Tulsa, but we want to live in those suburbs.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh yeah. And I'm digging. I'm like, why you want to live in those suburbs? Number one thing, schools.
Yeah. Yeah. One of
you think about all the people that are missing out on living in Tulsa, or the people of Tulsa.
Just because
they're like, no,
yeah. I think the other thing is, we also have in that education plan, we got to start looking at student growth because kids don't all start at the same spot. And so, if we were to look at how the district is getting kids who started, the kid who's in 4th grade reading on the 2nd grade level, how you level them up to catch them up. And judging success based off of that and investing in that success. And part of that education plan is actually to invest in teachers that are doing really good at getting growth out of students, because that is the real work of an educator, to take you to a new. I was an athlete for a long time, and all the great coaches, if you're on a college football team, that means that everybody on that team was the best player out of their high school, and that's how they ended up in college. But the coach's job to get even more out of you, right? And I think that's the same thing for a teacher. And what do we know? The coaches who get the most out of players, they get paid more.
Right.
I think we have to think about the same thing for teachers. If you're getting that kind of growth out of students and you're doing it in a really challenging environment because of all the societal issues that come to school with kids, I think you should be incentivized to stay right there because it's a tough job.
Yeah. My mom, I actually, on my mom's side, was all educators.
So
my mom was a teacher. Taught in Texas, taught in Ponca City, taught in Skytown, and then retired. We're going to touch on that for just a second here in just a second. But then, my aunts were all teachers. My grandparents were teachers. Their parents were teachers. And so now all my cousins, we have nothing to do with education system. We're like, no, we're not doing that.
I used to hate, I had a cousin that made nothing but straight A's all through school. And my aunt, her mother would always alert all the parents that, report cards are out because Chrissy made straight A's all the time. And I'm like,
why are you doing that?
But I don't. Right. So now my mom is alerted.
Man, when I used to live in Texas, like I said, all my aunts were teachers, and my grandmother, towards the end of her career in education, was a librarian.
Yeah.
I couldn't get away with anything at the elementary school. Anything.
Hey, I got something out of bet. Well, I didn't best that because you can't. They know everybody and all the gossip and everything. But my mom's a probation officer when I was growing up.
Oh.
She now works at TCC as the director of workforce programs. But growing up, she was a probation officer. Dad was a police officer. My grandfather was a pastor. One was a pastor and an Air Force veteran. The other one worked at Chevron Chemical Plant for 36 years. But it was like pastor, police officer, probation officer.
You couldn't do anything.
I mean, it was
Well, I
was gonna say if law enforcement isn't watching, the Lord is, I guess. So yeah,
that's good.
Can't get away with anything.
Can't get away with anything. I think tackling this Tulsa public school is going to be almost. I don't want to say there's going to be a lot of different avenues that you have to attack, and I think one that doesn't get touched on, and I think probably running for political office, you don't want to talk about this, but I'm going to bring it up.
Of course you would.
Yeah, of course I will. Because but the parents and the people that have their students at that school need to be involved with the solution. Because, for example, my mom was a teacher. She retired early because she was like, these kids aren't the same. I mean, because they weren't getting any help at home. So if we want Tulsa Public Schools to achieve, there's obviously some other things that we need to do of incentivizing teachers, if that's it, or giving more resources to schools. But I think another part of that's going to be is having that students, parents or guardians being part of the solution too.
I think that is part of it. I think it's part of it. We also got to hear from those parents and guardians though on what's challenging about home life or getting their kid where they need to be. Gavin, I have a 16-year-old and he struggled in algebra. Mm-hmm. And, he's seeing a tutor now and everything, but I went to go get an Algebra 1 for Dummies book because I was trying to help him, but I don't know algebra. So this idea that a parent in and of themselves know what to do or know how to support their student or have the ability to support their student, we got to make sure we're not only empowering those parents to know what they need to do, but Gavin goes to a tutor that has to be paid. Not everybody has the capacity to pay a tutor, So I think there's all these other issues out there. So we also got to extract this information from these families to understand what's challenging, what are the barriers that we need to help remove to help you help your child be successful, and be in a position to do just that. I think that some of it is certainly, parents need to be more involved, but what does that involvement need to look like for you to help your kids succeed? Your parents, they were all educators,
right?
But that's not the reality for a lot of folks. We got a lot of young people who are being raised by grandparents and those types of things. And so it's really about how are we centering the kids and understanding what do we need to do around that kid to help that kid be successful. Right. And using schools as a great way to engage and educate. But the rest of us, City Hall, but also all these other institutions around, we got to figure out how we're wrapping arms around that kid and getting them what they need and making sure it's not too hard of a system to navigate and work together to do it.
Yeah, because and the reason why I said that is because I'm speaking from experience as a parent.
Yeah, absolutely.
My daughter was struggling. I think it was fourth grade.
Mm-hmm.
Or it was third and fourth. And I went to my mom and educator, and I said, "Man, she's not Rylan. What are these teachers teaching her? She making all these bad grades or whatever."
Yeah.
My mom looked at me and said, "What was her homework assignment tonight?"
Oh, she got you.
And I said, "What?"
Yeah.
She goes, what was she learning in school? And I was like,
you're like, I shouldn't have called you.
Yeah, I was like, I should have called Dad. But and so I think I was viewing, not on purpose, maybe on purpose, as school as a free daycare.
Yeah.
And I wasn't being involved in the process of hey, let's sit down, let's go over your homework together, and
that's right.
All this other stuff. I mean, she's going to hit a point in high school where
statistics,
algebra, I don't know.
Oh yeah, that stuff. No man, I realized I didn't know it the first time that well, so I was like, I'm gonna learn it at 40.
If I was more involved in my students, and now I am.
Yeah,
she made straight A's in 6th grade.
There you go.
Shout out, Mom. But and also shout out to her mom and stepmom.
Because
they do a lot more than I do.
Yeah.
I'm more of let me see your homework. Oh, that's so awesome.
Yeah, just in case I get asked about it again. Yeah.
Right, just get asked about it again. But I think it's important to be in part of that, because if you are a part of it, then you know what challenges they have.
That's right.
You're able to go to the schools and help.
That's right.
And say, hey, my kid needs help with algebra, or get in contact with school of tutors or whatever. Versus when the school does call you and say, hey, how can we help your student?
Right.
are they even going to school? Like,
right.
So I think it's important just to be.
It's all about community, right? Like it's really about making sure, and it's easier to say than do. I will admit that, right? Because you got educators got a lot going on, parents have a lot going on. We oftentimes, it is easy for our kids to be somewhat invisible to us, and not like we don't hang out with them or anything like that, but like, I think about everything I do across a day, and I look at Gavin's schedule now at 16 years old. Like he's almost as busy as I am.
Yeah.
And I have to always, revert back and be like, man, what's going on? Like, you doing all right? Like, let's
check in.
What are you doing this weekend?
You want to hang out?
Yeah. The answer's always no at 16, by the way.
Absolutely. Yeah.
He's like, oh, I'm going to Jack's. I'm like, what?
Who's Jack? No,
I mean, did you just decide that? Did you ask anybody?
Right.
Like, no.
Yeah. Mom. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. He could always say that. I would never know.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And basically to tie all that in is, I think that we shouldn't look at that's a Tulsa Public School.
That's right.
fail.
That's right. That's exactly right.
It's our fail.
It's a community fail. Yeah.
It's from the community.
That's right.
From the schools, and it's going to be hard to say, but as the parent.
Yeah, I think it's computer.
No one likes to say, "Hey, I failed." No one likes to say, "Hey, what homework do they have tonight?"
Yeah.
When I had that conversation with my mom. And so I think we need to not just point the blame at Tulsa Public Schools, but
that's right. It is an all around failure. And I think we always have to be comfortable with that too, right? Like recognize we failed at something is actually the first step in, improving it. Just pretending like it's not a thing perpetuates that failure for a long period of time. And so you're absolutely right about that. And it's okay to say, we've not done this right for a long time,
right?
But we're committed now to doing things a lot better than we used to.
Yeah. And so one of your last points that you made on your priorities list for your campaign was a relationship with the Native American leaders.
Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah. So.
And why is that important?
Well, Tulsa is the largest city in the country that's all Indian reservation.
Oh. Okay.
And I think that's important for a lot of reasons. It's certainly important from a public safety reason. Post McGirt, like there's a whole different way about how folks are prosecuted now.
And actually, before we get into the Native American thing, there's one more topic on public schools I wanted to talk about. Is our superintendent of public schools.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Okay.
I don't know. And that's the thing when you look online. There's so many different things out there that I don't know what is true.
Yeah.
And I'm too lazy to go look it up. So since I have you here and you work in the government, you can just tell me. So what's up with this Bible thing? So what is that?
Yeah. So it is already legal and permissible to have a Bible in a classroom, in a library, that kind of stuff. What the guidance was from the state superintendent is that it was mandated that it be used as part of instruction in school. And I think that raises a number of concerns. And I'll say this, my grandfather was a pastor. I was raised United Methodist. I'm got no problem with people talking about their religion openly in just about any setting. The problem is not everybody's Christian. The other problem is not every teacher is well versed in theology and being able to help put it in the appropriate context. The Bible can say whatever it is that you want it to say at whatever time is convenient for you to say it. And I think it would be a disservice to young people if they were taught that kind of stuff in the wrong context. And so so a lot of concerns. I actually voiced the concerns in a press release, and the superintendent didn't have really nice things to say about me. So, it's been part of what comes with the job. But I mean, I do think that, you really have to be careful on that kind of stuff. I don't believe, my religion can be or should be reduced down to my politics. They operate on two different playing fields. And I get concerned when anybody tries to use it as an instrument of trying to, push people one way or the other, because it's just not the right thing to do. I say that I go to churches on Sunday and I talk about my candidacy and all that kind of stuff, but I don't believe that if you're a believer, that means you have to vote for Monroe.
Right.
I don't believe that. I think I do that kind of stuff because I know people in churches, you know, they have like it's a great place to go where people are thinking about community, right, and who are involved. And so I do think you got to be really careful because, you know, the Bible is a powerful book. Religion's a powerful thing, and I want to make sure that teachers who went to school to teach math and science and that kind of stuff stick to math and science. We leave the other stuff to other folks.
Right, and that was one of my biggest issues. Is first off, I think the separation of church and state. You know, I don't think it's, even though I'm a Christian. Right. But the other big thing for me was exactly what you said. Was we have these teachers that are you know, professionals, or you know, have learned how to teach math and reading.
Right.
Now they got to teach the Bible. I mean, some of these people aren't even believers. You want someone that's not a believer teaching your kid about what the Bible says? I mean, that I'm not okay with that.
Yeah, no, it's I think it's a pretty bad idea. No, I couldn't agree.
Is that now a law?
There's it's hung up a little bit. There's a number of school districts that said that they would not mandate that happens, and I think that when challenged, you know, the separation of church and state issue will be one that would not require districts to do that.
Do you think he could? Like, do you not think?
I mean, you know,
I think it'd be that much drawback.
Well, I think what the reality is about the superintendent is that he's in a bit of a hot water across the board. Like, you know, there's been an exodus of employees that have left the State Department. There's a number of investigations about grants and all that kind of stuff. I think sometimes people find something that's very convenient to try to distract a bit. And I think this is one of those issues.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Politics 101.
Yeah. Yeah.
No,
you have to have him, and maybe he has a different. I'm sure he has a different perspective.
Hey, if
but
he wants to come on and talk about
it, that's my read on that deal, though.
Yeah, if he wants to come on and talk about it, I don't care who.
Yeah.
Anybody, as long as you're from Oklahoma, and regarding Oklahoma, I don't care.
Yeah.
Democrat, Republican, what's superintendent of state
instruction? Public. Yeah. You know, you should come, and if he comes on your show, this is what I would be really interested in hearing from him.
Okay, yeah, tell me.
I want you. If he comes on the show, and I'm giving him a head start. So, Ryan, if you're watching, I want you to quiz him on the Bible.
Okay.
If he thinks to be taught in schools, I want you to ask him questions about the Bible.
Okay. I'll do it. I'll do it. That's a good question. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to do it.
If he can make a 50.
He can make a 50. That's not even a B.
No. If he can make a 50, and this is not saying he's not a believer or anything, but like, it's a big book, man. A lot of stuff in there.
Right.
Make a 50. We'll see.
Didn't he just get elected into that position recently?
He was elected. He won re-election in 2022.
Oh, he won a re-election?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so he was already in that spot.
Is that right? No. He won for the first time in 2022.
Okay,
that's what it was.
Okay. Yeah. He won for the first time. Okay.
Yeah. He beat Jenna Nelson.
Okay. Yeah. I'll be interested to see how that plays out. But yeah, I just want to touch on that because I was interested to see what you thought about it. And, yeah. So going back to this McGirt ruling.
Yeah, McGirt.
Yeah, McGirt.
Yep, McGirt. Yep.
What does that mean? What is that? Because that just passed, 2019?
Yeah, it was a Supreme Court decision, which said that tribal citizens who commit crimes on tribal land, the state of Oklahoma no longer has jurisdiction on the prosecution of those folks. So a lot of those were state cases. They broke state law. What that Supreme Court decision said was the state's criminal justice system actually didn't have jurisdiction. So it meant that all those cases had to go through tribal court or federal court. And so what it means functionally now is a tribal citizen who commits a crime in Tulsa would then have to go through the tribal courts as opposed to state court. And, you know, look, it doesn't mean that people won't get arrested for doing things. This is more so what happens on the back end from a prosecutorial standpoint, which is important for sure. And so it means that we have to have like kind of a new era in how we are working with tribes in Tulsa to make sure that, you know, we can, you know, speed and ease of making sure we're taking care of these cases, because it's everything from, you know, like you committed a serious crime to you got pulled over for a traffic citation type of a thing, right? So there's all these legal and technical challenges, which are just challenges. They're not even that hard. I mean, they're things that we can absolutely deal with, but we can't deal with them in court. So many that, you know, I know the governor has kind of sued the tribes. They've been in court, and it's been very contentious. I know the city is in court right now, I think, with the Creek Nation. In my attitude, and the reason why I think co-governing is so important is because, you know, we got all those things out in front of us, which are things that some people can say, oh, that makes Tulsa more dangerous. I don't believe that it does. But we also have all these real opportunities as well. I mean, if we are part of the reservation, what does that mean for opportunity to do some joint economic development planning with tribes? What about those tribal citizens that are part of that homelessness population? What about tribes' commitment to education in this community or to our workforce or to all those things, right? Like, so there's all these positive things that we could be doing. And so when I talk about co-governing with tribes, I'm not just thinking about the public safety challenges. I'm thinking about all this amazing opportunity. You know, I've said oftentimes, you know, how cool would it be to have, you know, one of the tribes have their corporate headquarters in Tulsa. What's going to happen to that corporate headquarters? Guess where it is never going? Anywhere else. It's going to be here. And they all have very diverse kind of business interests. A lot of people see gaming, you see casinos, and you're like, oh, that's... But they do all kind of things. They're not just in the gaming business. They have very diverse businesses. And so you think about the opportunity for growing Tulsa's economy by bringing in some corporate headquarters that are never going to leave. And I think so. I think we have it's really a statement about the opportunity, capturing the uniqueness about this community to help drive growth, I think is what I think about when I'm thinking about how, you know, how we co-govern with tribes.
That's interesting because I just now thought about this, and correct me if I'm wrong, but with this McGirt ruling, basically the tribes wanted to separate from the state with some of their judicial stuff, right? So
it wasn't that. So okay. the genesis of it was a man who was in prison who was challenging the outcome of his case, saying that the state didn't have jurisdiction over him. So it wasn't the tribes didn't proactively ask for the Supreme Court to settle this.
Okay,
that's what happened, and so that decision in this particular, his name is McGirt, in his favor, actually then, you know, had a whole wide-reaching implications about every tribal citizen and how they're prosecuted when they commit crimes on the reservation. So it wasn't the tribe saying we want to proactively, you know. Okay, it was just it was really the outcome of a Supreme Court decision more so than anything else. And because what we know about tribes in Oklahoma, we have, as a state, tribes have a significant economic impact on the state. And everything from what they do for car tax, give money back to the state, to what they do on like the tobacco stuff, how they're just growing economies from the standpoint of their employees and that impact on the state. I think the number somewhere in the $3 billion number or something like that in economic impact. And so, like, you know, the tribes, I don't think they were like, oh yeah, we don't want to be part of the state of Oklahoma anymore. That was not what happened at all. It was just the implications from a challenge to a conviction that then had these other wide-ranging implications.
Okay, that's good to know. That's good to know.
Yeah.
And you said Oklahoma and Tulsa's in the current lawsuit with some of the.
Yeah. So the state has been a pretty rocky road over the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years between the governor and tribes. It started with the governor's desire to renegotiate the tribal compacts.
Yeah.
Which gives them exclusive rights to gaming. And he approached that conversation with not a high degree of respect.
Yeah.
And kind of turned up the heat. And it's like, you know, if I was advising him, which I was not at the time, I'm not now either, you know, just to be clear, I would have told him, man, you know, just for the record, you know, governors have term limits.
Yeah.
Tribes do not. So you don't know how this is going to work out. But I think oftentimes where it's really hard to come to some sort of agreement when you got two people in a corner, you try to work it out in court, and we have lost. I say we, the state of Oklahoma has lost every court case that's gone in front of any judge on this issue. Like, tribal sovereignty has been affirmed over and over and over again. And what I don't want us to do in Tulsa is to follow that same track. It's like, really, how can we actually make Tulsa the gateway to Indian country, the biggest state in the country that's all Indian reservation? Why aren't we the place for, you know, native entrepreneurship? Why aren't we the place that, you know, people come to experience native culture? We got the 39 federally recognized tribes in the state of Oklahoma. Why aren't people coming to Tulsa first to embrace that culture as, like I said, a city that has Creek, Osage, and Cherokee reservation land that makes up our city? I think it's a really neat thing. It's a unique and neat thing about us.
Yeah.
that we don't talk enough about. It's something that as mayor, I want to lift up and make sure that people know us for a lot of different. It's really cool. Tulsa is one of the reasons I think Tulsa is the coolest place in the country. We were once like the oil capital of the world, so like we powered the entire globe. We were the center of black wealth with Black Wall Street. There's a lot of conversation about immigration, all this kind of stuff, but we are a city that is a growing population of first generation Americans. And I think that's really cool. And the contribution those people are making to really build Tulsa to what it's becoming. And we're all Indian reservation. Like, it is the most unique. It is like literally a crossroads of America. Yeah. Like, so if you think about like meeting these challenges on a piece of paper, like if we can't do it here, that means that all that can't get it done. But what I think that all tells us is like the best innovators, dream seekers, like builders of things, they're all here. Yeah. They're all here. And whether people came here, were born here, came here later, it's like part of your DNA as a Tulsan to be different. To push the envelope. And I think we've lost that some in like how we may govern, but I think it still very much remains deep down in people who live here. So I think that's, I think it's one of the coolest place in the world.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think it's also cool what the community, we touch on a lot of things about the community, but it's also, there's a lot of like, I don't know, I feel like a lot of people inside of Tulsa like really support other Tulsans.
I think that's right.
In arts, in culture, in local business with entrepreneurial spirited.
That's right.
I think it's just really cool.
Yeah. I'm telling you, man, I am very bullish on our ability to, win the next decade. Yeah. Like I think we're there. It's we're also right in the center of the country. It's the best. Geographically we got it going on.
YouTube channel?
No,
dude,
I did watch some of it. I didn't see that part though. I didn't steal that part.
Okay, all right. That's because that was one of my points. Is
where we geographically?
Yeah,
isn't that? Are we like we're 100 miles south or 100 miles north of like we're like literally like the geographic center of the country. Like, is it? It's like we're 100 miles off or something like that. I thought.
Yeah.
Pretty close.
The way I judge it is I looked at flights of like east, west,
coast,
north, and south, and we're all about what was it, 2.5, 3 hours?
Yeah.
From either
it's
south to north.
It shows you how big Texas is.
Texas is huge. Gosh, it's so big.
I think the drive to Houston is like the drive to Chicago, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. It's crazy.
Man. So you got some endorsements. Kathy Taylor endorsed you.
So far, I've said this, Kathy Taylor, former mayor, former Governor Brad Henry, former Governor David Walters, the people who have done this job or jobs like it, served in executive office in government, they all think that I'm the best person to do it. And I don't think that's because, it's not just about like you are insanely gifted. It's like you've come into this race, been very focused about how we tackle these challenges and doing it in an accountable way. And anybody who served in executive office knows that that's the way that you got to make change, right? That's the way that you move a community forward. And frankly, they've all known at least one of my opponents a lot longer than they've known me. And so it really is about like, what's it going to take to move Tulsa forward? And I think what we've done to this point, what I've done to this point in my career before I ever got elected, while I've been in elected office at the Capitol, and certainly it's been reflected in this campaign, we've been really clear about what that vision looks like, how we do it together, and then what's on the back end of it for us as Tulsans.
Yeah. All right, so here's my last question for you.
Yeah, let's hit it.
This will be a rapid one. Give me your top 3 favorite things about Tulsa, Oklahoma. It could be place to eat, things to do.
So my number one thing is, my number one thing is probably, so my son's an athlete, and I look forward to every time he plays sports. He's a football, baseball player now. Growing up, he played everything though. So before it was Saturdays when he had games, then it was all the time he has games, but now it's Friday nights. He's going to be a junior at Bishop Kelly.
Oh, okay.
But Friday nights is my favorite thing to do. There's nothing more exciting than that. Actually, my second thing is also somewhat sports related, which tells you a lot about me, I guess. What TU has done now for the tailgating experience pregame. I don't know if you've been over there this last season. It's insane now.
I went there. gosh, probably been 5 or 6 years.
You got to go back.
Oh, this is
So
crazy.
now Brad Carson is the stage out there. We have pregame concerts. There's stuff for kids and everything. It's a whole different thing now. Whole different thing now. So anytime I get a Friday night, Gavin plays. I get a TU home game on Saturday. It is legitimately the best weekend that one could have, right? So those are top two. I think the third thing, and I've been told that I should not talk about this.
No, I love it.
So I, on occasion, smoke cigars.
Oh.
And every once in a while, we have like these days in Tulsa where like the best day to sit outside. And so there's nothing like sitting outside with a couple friends, kicking back, talking about things, laughing, having a cigar or two.
Smoking a stogie.
Yeah.
You a big eater? Do you eat a lot?
I mean, of course.
What's your favorite? All right.
Oh, this is tough, man. I knew this,
you gotta answer tough questions.
Let's go back to the president thing.
The president?
Who I'm voting for. That's easier one for me.
That's easier.
All right, hit me with the question.
All right. What is your top 3 favorite restaurants in Tulsa, Oklahoma?
I like too many of them. This is a really hard one.
Top 3.
I don't think I have a top 3. This is like impossible for me to answer.
Dude, you're gonna run for mayor.
I know, but because I like them all. I mean,
you're doing the political.
No. So I'll tell you. I will tell you my very favorite restaurant that I ever in Tulsa. It's actually not open anymore. It was the.
Of course, it's not open anymore.
It's not because it wasn't
good at politics.
It's not because it was bad, by the way. No, it was the one that I like went to the most, like from when I was probably 19 in college to like when it closed in 2020 because of COVID. There was a place. That you probably never heard of. They didn't even have a card machine. It's called New Hong Kong. It was a Chinese restaurant at 11th and like Birmingham, that little strip mall over there. Yeah. I found it when I was like a sophomore in college, and it was my favorite restaurant for a very, very like literally
Chinese food.
Yeah, like ate there like 3 days a week. It was the only reason why I kept checks after a certain amount of time because they accepted checks and cash, which doesn't really sound like a good business model, but that's what they did. It's probably why they didn't survive COVID. But that was a favorite. Let's see here. I am also a very basic eater.
Okay.
For the most part. Like I like spaghetti.
Oh, okay.
I like macaroni and cheese. I mean, I'll eat other stuff too, but so let's see. My good friend Daryl Knox has a restaurant called Sweet Lisa's, which I really like, and now they just kind of do it to go deal. It's good. It's really good. Okay. Let's see. I don't think that'd be a place where I would say the best food. I really like steaks. Yeah. And so like, here's the deal on this one. I am not going to give you one restaurant. I'm going to give you a couple because it's like and I could do reviews on the steaks too if you wanted me to here. But I like the steaks at Polo Grill.
Polo Grill's fantastic.
I like the steaks at Mahogany.
Mahogany's good.
Like the steaks at Fleming's.
Yep, you hit my big 3.
And you know, I've had the steak at Bull in the Alley and it's pretty good. It's just like the massive one.
Yeah,
like
I've heard mixed reviews. I heard Bull and Alley very early on was a solid place. I heard over the last probably a year or so, it's kind of went downhill a little bit.
I've not heard that. I think it's an amazing place to eat.
There's your politician.
But yeah. So I mean, those are my 3 to go places for steak. Sushi. I like In the Raw. It's good.
Yeah, In the Raw.
In the Raw's good.
Been to the new spot.
Yokozuna's good. You haven't been downtown?
I haven't.
So you got to go on a Friday night where there's a baseball game because there's like fireworks and it's like boom right in front of you.
It's right.
So it's pretty cool.
It's right there because they shoot.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool.
Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
All right, cool. Yeah.
I feel like I'm sure I'd left something out which is gonna anger me.
That's the problem with Tulsa. Tulsa, believe it has a lot of great food.
Okay.
spots.
Okay. I've said this. So I travel around for my job outside the legislature a whole bunch.
Yeah.
And what I've said, there's only a couple things that you don't get in Tulsa that you can get other places. Other than that, we compete very well. So you go to New York, they're going to beat us at mass on like Italian food and all that kind of stuff.
Quantity.
But you're not going to find a better steak than you can find here, right? Mm-hmm. Like you're not going to find something better. Maybe something comparable, but not better. You're going to be like, oh my God, we don't want to do anything like that. And then there's like some maybe like, I like DC has really good like Nigerian food. I have never had it, but like some of the more ethnic things that are out there, we don't necessarily have that. But as far as like the basics, I think Tulsa is one of the best places to eat anyway.
Oh, we have a growler. I had a guy that moved here from California. Tulsa was on his spot because of the amount of food choices because he's a little bit of a foodie.
Ooh, have you been to Oak Heart Barbecue?
I have not
at
been
3rd and Utica.
I have not been to Oak Heart.
You got to go.
That is on my list.
It's really good.
That is on my list.
It's really good.
I heard it's the best barbecue. That and something called Alley Cats barbecue.
Oh yeah.
I think it was a food truck. I think it moved recently, but
yeah.
I heard
No, there's a lot. I could do a poll podcast on places I like to eat.
Yeah. I want you to come on to my short form videos. We'll go do a food review.
I'm down. Okay. I'll do it. I'd love to.
All right. Let's do it. All right. So before we leave,
we'll get our tattoos in too.
Oh God.
I'm not forgetting about that, by the way.
All right. If you do it, I'll do it.
It's going to happen.
Okay. All right. Let's do it.
Are we getting the same one?
That'd be kind of weird.
It would be weird. I mean, yeah.
Down.
Okay, I mean, it's fine. Yeah, I mean, it'd be awesome to explain. It's like, yeah, this guy just came on the podcast. We got the same tattoo.
I mean, we're getting different spots. I mean, where would we get it at?
Well, you say we're getting different spots, so what does it matter?
Yeah, but I mean, we gotta get in a different spot. We can get the same tattoo, but at a different spot.
That's fine.
Yeah, I mean, because if we both have the same tattoo in the same spot,
yeah, the streets will start talking about that.
The streets
will start talking about that.
Streets will start talking.
Yeah.
So where can they find you if they want to know? Or actually, do you want to touch on anything that we hadn't touched on yet?
No, I mean, I think the thing I would touch on is that 2024 is a big year as it relates to politics. We've got a presidential race, which is going to take up a lot of the air. We got state legislative races, same kind of thing, congressional races. But I think the mayor's race is the most important decision people will make. And fewer people will go to the polls on August 27th to vote than the folks who will go in November. And so when you think about how important an individual vote is, it's critically important on August 27th. And just know that the person who you elect as mayor is going to be the person who is going to be sitting there thinking about all the things that impact your life on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. Police, trash pickup, streets, how kids are educated, how we're, going to address the issue with homelessness. That's going to happen at City Hall. Vice President Harris, former President Trump, they'll do their thing in D.C., but those issues that people care about the most, it's going to be the next mayor. It's going to be making so many of the decisions about how we're going to spend resources and, the kind of activities we're going to be engaged in to address them. So it's a critically important race. And I would say, we talked about today, I mentioned about winning the next decade and the potential we have that we won't realize unless we address these challenges. That makes this one of the more important mayor's races in a very, very long time. It's a decision to win the next decade or not. That's what's on the ballot. And I sure hope that folks, are going to follow all of us, make a very well-informed decision. We have a forum on Thursday coming up, and another forum the Thursday after that.
Debate?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thursday evening, and then another one next Thursday evening. I don't know when this is going to air, so one on the 1st, one on the 8th, I think.
As soon as possible.
Yeah, 1st and the 8th. And, but, MonroeForMayor.com. You can find me there. Monroe for Tulsa on Facebook and Instagram. Monroe for Tulsa on Twitter or X, whatever we call it now. Mm-hmm. But Monroe for Mayor, you can find everything that I'm about, what I'm working on, and also connect with the campaign. Because I think governing is tough. Winning is tough. This is make history if we win this election. But I think more important than the history we'll make by the identity of the person that we could elect is going to be the statement that we're going to do things a little bit differently in Tulsa. And we're serious now about moving this community forward in a new and exciting way. So vote August 27th.
All right. Well, Monroe, thank you so much for coming on.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
And
absolutely.
I appreciate it. So make sure you go out and look up different candidates. Look up what they stand for, what policies, what are their most important things that they have on their priority list, and they can vote on August
27th.
That's right.
So,
all right, Monroe,
all right, man.
Thank you so much for
coming on. Thank you. Absolutely.